Welcome to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm Greg Story, your host today. I'm the president of Dale Carnegie Training Japan. And my special guest today is an old friend of mine, Mario Spitzer, who is the president of Stihl Japan. Welcome, Mario.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Yeah, thank you, Mario. Thank you. So, Mario, tell us, how is it that you're in Japan? How did you get to Japan, and what sort of leadership roles have you had in Japan?
Well, as you know, Greg, I'm in Japan already nearly 30 years. I was on a business trip, and afterwards, my employer decided that we grow in Asia. So I was assigned to join the Japanese subsidiary. At that time, it was Spitzer Japan. One very big issue at that time was the proficiency to speak Japanese. At that time, hardly anybody spoke Japanese. All signage was in Japanese. So my former employer, he asked me to join the executive training program from the European Union. So they applied for a scholarship with the European Union, and I was member of the executive training program from 1992. So already nearly 30 years ago. So I came to Japan. I was here for 18 months, and I had the hard time to study Japanese in nearly man-to-man lessons, 7 hours a day. And we had to study 2,000 kanjis and everything within 1 year. So this was a pretty tough time, but this was a very essential asset in my professional development. So having joined the ETP program was a big chance for me. And during the ETP program, one of our customers scouted me, and they asked me whether I take over their company here in Japan. So in 1993, I became CEO of a manufacturer of industrial textile machinery, basically industrial goods, investment goods. And at that time, we were only selling B2C. So we didn't have any dealers. So actually, we were trading directly with the industrial enterprises. And I was doing this job for 14 years. And then 2008, I changed the companies again. I joined Stihl, which is, I think many people know it. Stihl is very, very famous outdoor product equipment manufacturer. We are, since 1972, market leader for chainsaws, and I became CEO of Stihl 2008.
Think back to that first occasion that you were made the leader in Japan. That's a big deal. You're coming out of the ETP, and they say, okay, please run the company. That's pretty amazing. So what were some of your early experiences taking over as the head and leading the team? What were some of the challenges you had? You must have many, many challenges at that time coming in from outside like that. What were some of the main challenges you found?
Oh, Greg, absolutely. If I would be asked today with my 56 years whether I would do the very same thing again, I don't know. At that time, I was young. I was highly motivated. I thought I can win the entire world, and I think this was the necessary attitude to challenge this job. Mm-hmm. I was 28 years old, and I was a greenhorn for Japanese people. Yeah. At that time, seniority was a very, very important point in Japan. So when I went to visit customers, was 28 years, and my business partners were 70, 75 years. This was like speaking to their grandchildren when they were speaking to me. And this was a huge challenge, but I challenged them. And I would say after the third year, they got used to. So while they somehow had to live with this guy, he seems to be around a little bit longer, and they started accepting me. And this was very, very nice. And I learned a lot. As I just said, I was a very young guy. I was ready for the fight. I was taking the challenges, and I was very open, result open in everything I did. So this was a very, very interesting and challenging time for me.
So as a leader of the team, how big was the team you were leading at that time?
At that time, we were 18 people. This was a very small company.
Right.
And we were, as I said, we were importing textile investment machinery for the fashion industry, for the knitting industry. So there was no big need for a big workforce. When you made one deal, this was a significant amount of money where you didn't have to make the footwork, which you have to do with consumer goods.
So within the team, I guess you've got different functionalities there, but I suppose the sales team was a pretty critical group for the success of the business. So what were some of the things that struck you about how sales are done in Japan when you first encountered that? Because it's quite different to the rest of the world in some ways.
Absolutely. At that time, building personal relationships was very, very important. To go out in the evening with the customers for karaoke, for snacks, for wining and dining. Actually, I think in every bigger city in Japan, I had my own bottle of whiskey where the customers, even if I wasn't there, they went there and they drank out of my bottle. This was part of the wining and dining service I provided to the customers. And they anticipated to have this personal relationship. Mm. Having said so, Greg, I'm very sure that times changed to today. So nowadays, such wining and dining doesn't have the importance it had 25 years ago. It is still important. It is very important to have the trust of your customers, but it is not this personal relationship anymore, which is substantial for the business.
And so how is it for you leading your Japanese sales team, your own team members? What were some of the difficulties or challenges or things you found that were a bit different when you were doing that?
At that time, everything was analog. So it was pretty difficult for me to gather the information which piled up on my desk. All sales reports were analog, and we just started implementing some digital technologies in 1993, 1994. And also here the times significantly changed. But at that time, it was important for me to have very close contact with my sales guys, that we had a chance to meet in person, to exchange informations, to exchange experiences from the market, to speak about upcoming challenges which we have. This customer needs this customer needs that. So it was very important all the time to have this exchange of informations.
So how did you keep your Stoll team engaged? What were you doing to keep them engaged? Or you didn't need to do anything? They were automatically engaged? How did that go?
Well, I kept them running. They had their targets, and they had fulfilled the target. But these were different times than nowadays. I don't think that I would do it the very same way nowadays. How
would you do it today?
Well, today it is not this seniority principle anymore. It is nowadays, for me, I'm living a philosophy that I try to get everybody on the very same eye level. It is not only towards me, but also that the team themselves, they speak to each other in the same level, that everybody can say what he or she wants to say, can make the point regardless of seniority or positions. At that time, 15 years ago, this was not the situation. But nowadays, I think it is very, very important that everybody knows exactly that they can speak up. And I expect it from my team.
So often, when we're representing a company in Japan, headquarters have got very certain and specific expectations about the results. And we're the leader, so those pressures are on us to produce those results. But then you've got your Japanese team who've been used to doing things in a certain way, producing the same basic results. So how did you manage to get the team to produce more results or better results? What was effective for you?
Greg, I think a very important point here is that I have a very high expectation to my team. So when, for example, when we have a meeting, I don't know, I will find out, it's not an option here. So the people should be prepared for any discussions we have well in advance. They should gather the information together with their team so that everybody is sitting in the same boat. We touch base on the issues. And then I delegate responsibilities to my team, which is very, very important. Sometimes even I even accept that they make mistakes, knowing that they make mistakes, but it's very important that they learn out of their own mistakes. And many Japanese people won't do this, or they would be very angry at their team, whereas I don't pick on them. If they make a mistake, they learn their lesson and they don't make the same mistake twice. So it's very important to get everybody involved. Very important to have a very clear decision making, so that they don't come to me with every decision. Please make a hunko here, hunko there. No, they have their area of responsibility, and they have to take decisions within their area of responsibility. So we don't have this nimawashi. So once the budgets are developed together, the budgets are set up, the processes are running, they have to make their own work. And it's very, very important that they see they don't have anybody, they ask for permission. No, it's their responsibility.
Yeah, that's actually, Japan's one of those countries where no defects allowed, no mistakes allowed. So, as you say, trying to encourage people to learn and accepting that in the process of learning, they will make mistakes is quite different, I think, from the Japanese approach, which is no mistakes, and so therefore limit what you're capable of to stay within your expertise area. So that must have been quite a revolution for the Japanese to be encouraged to step out of their comfort zone, make mistakes. So I guess, the critical thing there is how we treat the first mistakes, like you give them freedom, then someone makes a mistake, everyone's watching. Well, what's Mario going to do about that, right? Is Mario going to criticize the guy? Is he going to spank the guy or gal? How does he treat that? So how did you find, when that came up, how you treated that? What was in your mind about, okay, I've said it's okay, I've got to demonstrate it's okay, therefore everyone has to know it's okay. What was your communication pattern to people that it's okay?
Greg, this took me 10 years.
Okay, right.
14 years. It took me 10 years until I had everybody in the boat. So there were people which are adopting easier, and there are other people which also need this kind of guidance in the environment they were working until now. And I try to speak in metaphors, and I try also to convince the people that things change, and same do we. A very, very prominent metaphor I'm using is the sales of water. So if a sales manager 25 years ago would have said, let's sell water, I have a good idea, he would have been fired. And nowadays, if you go to a vending machine, you have 5 different sorts of water which are on sale. So this is a very, very, very good example to get the people in the boat that we have to think every day new, that we have to find us every day new. And they know by my habitat that I'm not picking on them. So if somebody makes a mistake, and as I mentioned, sometimes I even know before they started that this will cause a certain monetary damage, but I make this open-eyed, and I let them do them, and they learned their lesson without being yelled and without being. So this is a very, very self-learning process. With children, I think they say learning by pain, but it is very, very professional. And the people know that I expect from them that they come to me when they have an opinion. They have problems if they don't come to me. So if they tell me, well, I knew, This is something I don't want to hear. If somebody knows something in advance, I expect the people that they tell me what they think. And even if their opinion is the opposite opinion than mine, if they know better, they have to convince me. And I'm listening to them. And I change my opinion if they convince me. That's very important, that to show the people that it's not the big president who makes a decision. No, he or she is listening to them and taking the different points in consideration, and then makes a final decision.
Mm. And you're at Stoll for quite a number of years. Then you moved to Stihl. So how big was Stihl when you took over at Stihl?
Stihl, when I took over, was also a small company with approximately 100 people. And we streamlined processes and organization down to a little bit less than 70, while having quadrupled the turnover.
Okay, so, you said it was 18 people at Stoll when you were there. Did it grow while you were there? Was it much larger at the end?
No, it was around about the same. It was a little bit slightly even decreasing because the market became smaller.
Right. So you've gone from 18 or around about 18 to now you've got 100. That's a big jump. That's a more than 5 times jump. So what were some of the challenges you found of going from 18 is quite an intimate number. You know everybody very well. You're working close together. Now you've got, direct reports. They've got their people in their groups. You're up here, they're down there. What was challenging to make that change from a smaller team to a much larger team?
Greg, the main important point once you go over the 30 is that you cannot do everything anymore by yourself. So you have to have a reliable second management level where you can delegate, where you can ask them to take care about certain processes, etc., because you cannot do this anymore by yourself. And you having said that me up, them down, this is something I don't practice in the company. I have my door in my office is usually open, so everybody, from the people from the picking floor to my CFO, everybody just walks in. When the doors open, they know they can come in and address me. And for me, I think the most important part here in the company is that even though I have now quite some people, I know them. I know them by name. I address them by their family name. I know their hobbies. I know their family issues. I know their interests. And when at least once a month, I walk through the company and address every single of my staff with their family name and speak with them, make some small talk, and they appreciate it. Same as, for example, things like birthday. It's a habit for me that every person who has birthday gets a personal congratulation from myself. Even if it's a Sunday morning, I call them just to tell them happy birthday. They appreciate that I know that it's their birthday. And this gives a certain circle of trust. So we are one team, one group working together. That's very important.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Yeah, I mean, that's impressive that you made the effort and took the time to do that. But I mean, that's not very easy, to actually know the name and the, what's going on within the family situation, etc. That takes time. How did you?
Well, that takes time, but you don't have to know this by heart. So you make your memos, and before you go to the departments, go over your memos and just have a brief. Go again what happened last month, and then you know what's going on. And at the end of the day, Greg, it is not so much time you spend there. That's 1 hour, 2 hours a month, and that's absolutely worth the time spending there.
Yeah, I'm impressed by that. That's really excellent, getting to keep track of everyone. And so you've now also got a layer, as you say, of direct reports for you. And often in companies, and 100 is, you say it's a small company, but I think that's a reasonable sized company, that, the top person is trying to create a culture or a direction, and it goes down through the direct reports filters down through to the team. But often it's surprising that you think that people know what you want to have happen. But in fact, what you find often is the people at the very bottom don't know. Sometimes that message doesn't quite filter down correctly or clearly or sufficiently. And there's a bit of a gap between what the top thinks happening and what's actually happening at the bottom. How do you get around that problem to make sure that the direction you're setting, the culture you're setting for the company is actually going all the way down to the most junior, most new person?
Greg, you're making a very important point here. And actually, it is not a question of the language. It's a question of the attitude. So what is very important that you cross-check that all informations, all messages are properly conveyed to the persons which needs to have this information. Mm-hmm. Very often, I have people speaking German, English, Japanese, regardless of the language I speak to them. Sometimes they don't understand me. And this is part of the Japanese culture that not everybody likes to ask questions, or some people even feel it's rude to ask something. You have to ask whether they really understood you. So, for example, when I'm speaking to somebody in English, and I'm also not a native English speaker, so if the person I'm addressing, I have the impression that he or she doesn't understand me, I tell them, can you do me a favor and tell me in Japanese what I just said? Mm-hmm. To cross-check, again, whether the message was appropriately conveyed or not. Very often you have the situation that the people think, he most probably meant this and this. But this might lead to a derailment of the carriage. So it's very important to have the message very clear, communicated to everybody, and the very same in the team. So I urge my management team also to check with their people whether they have fully understood what they're asked to do.
Yeah, good practice. Good practice. And when I've been in large companies in Japan that do these global engagement surveys, every country, and then usually you wind up in Singapore or Hong Kong or wherever your APAC hub is, and you're sitting in this room with all the other leaders, and they're throwing up, Europe's results, America's results, South America's results, etc. And then you get to APAC, and always APAC's results would be the lowest amongst the groups in the world, and then at the very bottom of APAC would be Japan. And so you always got this pressure. How come Japan's results are so low? You're obviously doing a bad job there. The people are not engaged. I don't know if you have that issue with Stihl, if they do these sort of engagement surveys, but I always found that a bit of a struggle to try and explain that maybe the survey is not exactly translated correctly, or it's not culturally, it's not quite right, or I think the people are engaged, but they're very conservative, they score differently. How's your experience, if you have these types of surveys, how's your experience been with this?
Greg, I'm very fortunate that we don't have these comparisons.
Bully for you. Good. That's the best answer.
Having said this, we make dealer satisfaction surveys. We make other surveys in the market, right. And there you really have Japan typical answering schemes, which are different than in other countries. So if you have a range satisfaction from 0 to 10, 6 in Japan doesn't necessarily translate to a 6 in United States or Europe. But our headquarters makes very professional market research, and they are in a position to reevaluate the findings they have from the Japanese market. So I never had the situation that I had to explain why is this or that. So they are kind of looking into the figures, not only as a figure, but also in a general context.
No, good positioning there. You know, one of the triggers for getting innovation is that people are engaged. And, you know, if you're going to build a better mousetrap and you don't really care about the company, well, you don't care about the better mousetrap either. But if you are caring about the company, you do want it to be a better product, you know, for the customer service, etc. So getting innovation is very critical, I guess, in any industry. What have you done, or what have you found effective to get innovation from your team?
What do you mean by innovation?
Okay, they come up with ideas. They might come up with better systems. They might come up with ideas for better products. They might come up with ideas for better service, that type of thing from their side.
Well, I always urge them to think out of the box. Mm-hmm. And very unusual for Japanese company, I would say, is the fact that I say, don't worry about the costs first. Think about the process. Think how we can develop together, and then we have a look at the costs. And at the end of the day, we make a very simple calculation whether it makes sense economically to execute this proposal or not. And they know that they don't get shouted if they come up with an investment of this and this. If this pays off, and if this is better and more economical than what we did until now, it is good for them. The very same goes with expenses. I'm from the southern part of Germany, which many people make the big mistake. They think that the Swabians are stingy. They are not. The Swabians are willing to spend money if it's worth the money. So this was a very important point to get to my staff, that they say, if you see a need for investment, don't be shy to ask for it. We discuss this. And fortunately, my staff now is very proactive, and without asking them, if they see something which could make their life easier, or which could make our processes easier, or at the very end to help our end user, our customers, then we certainly discuss this.
Yeah. Did you ever have a formal process of brainstorming with the teams, go to an off-site or something like that? Or is this just sort of a daily feedback pattern you're using?
We don't go off-site. Mm-hmm. What we do with our sales team, of course, I have sales guys all over Japan. We have, of course, local area meetings where we go in medias res and where we discuss for 1 or 2 days different issues. Here with my team, I have a management team which we meet once a week, half a day, where we discuss open issues. As you know, I have a full line, except production, I have a full line organization here from IT over logistics, sales, marketing, customer center, technology, finance, personal, so everything. So we meet once a week, half a day, and discuss together the things what happened last week, the things which come up this week, and we discuss projects.
Speaking in public means our personal and professional brands are on show. Let's make it a total success. Japan Presentations Mastery is the Bible for presenting in Japan. This is the most comprehensive collection of experience and insight on presenting that you will ever need. Don't work it out by trial and error. Buy Japan Presentations Mastery and learn how to be confident, clear, and persuasive. Buy Japan Presentations Mastery now. And what about, again, when you were Stoll, with Stihl now, building trust in the team? I think when you've got 18 people, it's a smaller scale. It's probably perhaps, I don't know, maybe easier to build trust with a smaller team than a 100-person plus team. But what are some of the things, well, now you said maybe 70 or 80, so it's maybe a bit more contained, but still it's a large number of people. What are some of the things that you've found over the years have worked well for you to build trust between you and the team members?
Well, as I already said, it's very important to speak with them, not as the big shacho or the big president who is hard to reach. No, they know that they can contact me anytime. I speak with them when I meet them in the morning. I'm very polite. I greet them. I ask them, how's your family doing? How is this and that? So it's very important to stay in touch. I would say a touchable president. So I'm not, my competitors, for example, many of the staff don't even know the president of the company. And for us, this is very important. And I also involve, for example, my wife into many activities. So when we have outing with the company, when we go felling in the forest or whatever, my wife provides some bento and then she's involved. So we are one family, and we consider ourselves a Stihl family. So this is a very, very intimate setup we have here.
Very good. And so when you're thinking about building the culture that you want in the company, what have you found works well to work out what the culture is you want and to create that culture? What has been successful for you to do that?
Well, as I said, it's very important that the people know exactly what is their responsibility, not to question everything what they are doing, because it's their job, it's their responsibility. It's just the opposite. If somebody has a clear thing to do, I don't want to be asked, can I do this or that? That's their job. Once the process are set up, once the budget is set up, I ask them to do their job. And at the beginning, sometimes I had to say, well, I pay you a salary that you make this job. And they understand this then. So it's very important not to cross-check again everything. Did you do this? Did you do this? Did you do that? No, you have to rely on the people, and they have to feel that you rely on them. And the more they have this feeling, the more they fight to satisfy you.
Okay, very good. And are you mainly dealing with them in Japanese? Are you mainly speaking in Japanese every day, or is it English, or what's the main language you use?
I'm the only foreigner in the company.
Right.
Meaning I only communicate with them in Japanese, except for the staff which needs some English. We try to, just not to get rusty, we try to speak some English, but basically everything is in Japanese.
Right, okay, very good, very good. And if you were thinking about people watching this Japan Stop Business Interviews, have got now, we're over 85 videos so far. And it's a tremendous resource for someone who's being sent to Japan, that you could go and watch 85 business leaders talk about leading in Japan before you even get here. But if you were to think about a couple of pieces of advice you'd give to someone who'd been told, okay, you are going to Japan, you're going to run an operation in Japan, go make it a success, what would be some pieces of advice you'd give someone in that case?
I would start with Japan is not different. So very often the people say, well, Japan is different. It is not. So go.
What's the same then? What are you thinking? When you say it's not different, what are you thinking? What is going through your mind there?
Well, in former times, many people said, if you open a business in Japan, the first 5 years you don't earn money. This is the wrong approach. If you don't earn money the first 5 years, then don't come to Japan. Don't blame Japan for everything which is not running. So usually people which are successful, they don't complain about Japan. They say, make your business like a modern manager does, and you will be successful. So many people which fail in Japan, they say, well, Japan is different and we have to make this. And Japanese, they prefer only Japanese products. And There are some examples, but this is not the common situation anymore. So it's the Japanese market is a very open market. The people are very open-minded, are very, very polite, very, very. They want to be international, even though they are not yet international, but they want to be international. And just go to the people, speak with the people, and don't block yourself by thinking Japan is different. No, go with your concept to Japan. Try to convince the people that you have the right product, that you have the right setup, and the people will follow.
And, a lot of times, foreign leaders who come here, they've been told by headquarters, okay, you've got to turn Japan around, and we're expecting big results. And they come in and they start wanting to change everything and make it more like headquarters. So, and obviously you can imagine that's going to be very difficult to make that work. So when you talk about modern managers should know what they're doing, often I wonder if they actually do know what they're doing and whether they really appreciate that there are some things here that work very well in Japan, and you're trying to put the foreign headquarter, imprint on the Japan operation. It may not work that well. What is your thought? What are some of your thoughts on that idea?
Absolutely, the very same opinion like you. Of course, you have to see Japan through the Japanese glasses. Mm-hmm. You have a culture here. You have it goes from business practices to political investment, not investment, political interest. Mm-hmm. It's a different setup here. Having said this, the people still make business, and the people still want to have a good product at a fair condition with a reliable partner. And as long as you make this, things work. What is not working, as you just said, if somebody comes from headquarters to Japan and he has to change everything, the people don't follow. Why? Because every 3 years there's a new guy coming from headquarters, so they just keep on doing what they did until now. So I think this is a very, very big problem for overseas companies to make a turnaround here, because they are not sustainable. They send somebody here, and after 2-3 years, then the next guy comes. This is not working. So when you want to make a change, you have to make it with a sustainable concept, with a clear vision, and you have to involve everybody into what you want to do, what is the target, and this must be very realistic target. The grass doesn't grow faster if you pull it. You have to.
Great expression. I haven't heard that before. I love that. It's a great metaphor.
Yeah, but it's just as it is, and if you set the target too high, the people cannot follow, because they will block from the very beginning. They say he's dreaming, but in 3 years he's away, and then the next guy comes. This is not working. So you have to make a realistic target. You have to involve your team into everything what you're doing, why you are doing this. You have to take their opinion about it. You have to accept different opinions, which is also a big problem many times for people coming from overseas, because they didn't listen to what the people tell them. So if you make the entire Rubik's Cube, then this can work out.
And should they learn Japanese?
Difficult question. For me, it is a big advantage, because I can read between the lines. I can understand if somebody literally spoken yes or no doesn't necessarily mean this. So I can understand the people, also the way how we speak to each other. This is different than you have simultaneously translating person in between. It is an advantage if you speak Japanese, but it is also dangerous. So once you enter business discussions, one should be always very sure about that their own Japanese is probably understood. Mm-hmm. So if you make the wrong statement and the people say, well, he speaks Japanese, but you didn't mean it, then it's better to have a translator involved. Mm-hmm. For me personally, I prefer to speak Japanese with the people, and it's easier for them to speak with me Japanese.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's working for you. So how would you define leadership?
Being motivated by yourself, giving this motivation to your team, involving your team in one team. I would say, don't be the bright star by yourself. Gloom under the star of others. So I think this is very important that you don't shine telling the people how good you are. Let the others shine, and you will be very successful.
Yeah, that's great. All right, great. Well, thank you very much. It's been absolutely fabulous, Mario. Thank you very much. And everyone, please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.